amplify the mistakes. Their mistakes are amplified by the numbers who follow them without question. And charismatic leaders tend to build up followings, power structures, and those power structures tend to be taken over by people who are corruptible. I don't think that the old saw about power corrupting and absolute power corrupting absolutely is accurate. I think power attracts the corruptible.
Frank Herbert is referring to his character of Dune's protagonist, Paul Atreides. Herbert emphasizes that the so-called charismatic leader may not be who they portray themselves to be. He believed that these leaders tended to unravel overwhelming followings and complex power structures that would question the authenticity of the public's judgment and the lack of questioning of their own leaders. In the book, we followed the heroic trope of Dune's leader, Paul Atreides, as we see the consequence of his endeavor for justice and desire to change the course of the universe. Dune is set thousands of years into the future, where people are based on different planets across the galactic empire. The laws are centrifugal to an emperor under the rule of Shaddam Carino IV. Beneath the emperor are the great houses like House Atreides and House Harkonnen. They are powerful lineages who rule planets assigned using their hold on power, wealth, and formidable armies. The houses run planets amidst a strict administration of a feudal system, a set of legal regulations akin to medieval politics. However, the Emperor and the Harkonnens are anxious and jealous over the Atreides' rising popularity and power. They set the Atreides to failure by assigning them to rule an uninhabitable planet known as Arrakis. The planet Arrakis, home to the Fremen tribe, consists of almost exclusively of dry desert. Intimidating mountain ranges with immense precipice encompass the planet's sand-suffused city and caverns. The harsh conditions of Coriolis winds, scorching heat, and giant worms make Arrakis nearly impossible to abode in. Nonetheless, it is the only planet in the known universe where the spice melange is found and harvested. The spice is a substance known for its geriatric properties, used to preserve life, enabling space travel, expands consciousness, and becoming the foundation to the technological development of the universe. Paul Atreides is the son and heir to Duke Leto Atreides, and the Lady Jessica, mother of Paul and Leto's concubine, is part of a matriarchal sisterhood called the Bene Gesserits, a powerful organization that operates through ritual mysticism behind the shadows. Their duty expands through centuries of a strict breeding program that manipulates bloodlines in the hopes to birth the Kwisatz Haderach. Lady Jessica was instructed to bear only daughters, but due to her love for Leto, she birthed Paul.
You were told to bear only daughters, but you in your pride thought you could produce the Kwisatz Haderach.
The Missionara Protectiva, also known as the Black Arm of Superstition, is a unique engineering tool used by the Bene Gesserits to plant a seed of superstitions to primitive cultures, that being the Fremen people. The Sisterhood used this in order to sow legends and prophecies as a way to set a foundation for the Kwisatz Haderach, thus benefiting the Sisterhood for greater power and hopes to cultivate humankind by a godlike figure. Considering the Fremen saw an archetypal messianic figure for their tribe, by the time Lady Jessica and Paul arrived, they would fit the legends bestowed upon them. Paul then used this to gain power from the Fremen using adept skills of the weirding way, helped by the Fremen yield more to their prophecy. In the end, Paul, who had lost his father and his settlements, sought justice against the Harkonnens and the current Emperor Shaddam IV. He succeeded wielding the throne of the universe, but in doing so, intertwined his position with the fanatical Fremen religion. Paul's godlike bravura would implore his people into committing outrageous wickedness in his name. Due to Paul's young and eager manner, he makes a more believable son whose characteristics convey a more inspirational or brilliant bravura, in which were antithetical to Duke Leto's sensible and pragmatic approach. Leto portrays the archetypal goodness of a noble man who doesn't want to hurt anyone without good reason, and would sacrifice his own self for the people. We see this when Leto ordered the men to evacuate the spice harvester, losing the newly gained spice to the worm. Paul, however, had the charisma in which he sought further beyond Leto could even fathom. Despite the emotional impact on the loss of Paul's father and empire, it is quite evident that Paul's temperament can be interpreted as an example of a stoic leader. In the book, we can see a quality of stoicism practiced between Jessica and Paul. The restraint from fear is constantly being nurtured with the use of a litany against it.
I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. When the fear is gone, there will be nothing. Only I remain.
In Stoic teachings, one of the core theses proffers that to bring our minds into this state of agreement, living in accordance to nature, is what brings both the nature of the universe and human beings to harmony. Marcus Aurelius, former Roman emperor, was one of the most powerful men in the history and quintessential Stoic leader. In the Meditations he wrote, "This thou must always bear in mind. What is the nature of the whole, and what is my nature?" He contemplated that the physical nature, like birds, trees, plants, all have a natural order, and is to live in virtue and fulfill one's potential is human's natural order. He did not believe in the accumulation of riches. Even when observing the brutal Harkonnens who react through impulse, sadistic, own sex slaves, gladiator slaves, labor slaves, they led the pinnacle of hedonistic, indulgent lives that took advantage of their own power. Paul's power can be seen as his idea of fulfillment of his human potential. He is the one that can free the oppression of the Fremen and live accordingly with the ecology of Dune. The self-reliant, self-determination, personal liberation, or the so-called Übermensch embodiment. What the death of his father meant was that Paul had to do better. It was up to him to search within himself to rise above his own fears and limitations, creating his own virtue as a leader and to be more than the average human being. This journey mirrors the Overman ideology that overcomes a new structure of value to guide humankind. However, what makes this ironic is that Nietzsche conceptualized the notion of God is dead, the decay of God, to function as grounds in order to build a firm value foundation. It can be argued that Nietzsche and Herbert do share the similar idea that there should be a warning against demagogues and institutions. But what makes Paul lose his stoic overman status is that he would inevitably become a tyrant in the second book. In Dune Messiah, it was revealed that Paul is not who we thought he was after all. He surmises that he should actually destroy himself, but then he likened his doing to Genghis Khan and even Hitler. But the numbers were incomparable to Paul's 61 billion kill count since the end of Dune. And not only that, Paul also ended up transforming Arrakis. Being fixated in terraforming the planet, he ended up making Arrakis the most prosperous it could ever be. Despite that, it costed the declining population of worms, in which were needed to sustain the spice melange. As Stoicism is concerned, it can be said that he violated the idea of living accordingly to nature. The Fremen lived without greed and were quite comfortable and well adjusted to the planet, only for it to be taken away by their own messiah. With that in mind, The Fremen could be seen as the real Stoics of the story. They are opportunists who stay loyal even to risk their own lives. But that does not make Paul exactly innately evil. He could be deemed as the hero of his own arc, or the so-called tragic hero.